Well, good evening, everyone. How you doing? I'm Lee Love, and I don't know how I'm doing tonight. Weird technical problems going on tonight. I don't know what's happening. The computer system's got a mind of its own. So we might be on the air, we might not. You may see me, you may not. I don't know what's going to happen here. Um, you might have noticed in the open, it wasn't the regular open that we normally do. Stuff just kept popping up on its own. I'm still not quite sure. So anyway, this is Photo Mentor TV. We do this every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And the purpose of this is to educate, encourage, and mentor photographers, new and old, of course. And anyway, glad you're joining us here. If you're joining us live, that's great. See, there's what I'm talking about. It just shows up on its own for no reason. And I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway, I'm glad you're joining us here. It's live or on the replay. And tonight, hopefully, we're going to talk about color. If I can get my slides back again, they've kind of all disappeared for some reason. So very strange. I don't know what's going on. Okay, here we go. I think we got them back. Anyway, very weird here. See, I don't know why this thing is coming up. There's not even, that input is not even a valid input anymore. So I don't know what's going on here. Oh well. I guess I'll figure that out later. See, this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to talk about color and all kinds of cool things color related. And you know, I realized as I got into this that this is going to be a really complicated topic and certainly much more involved than I thought it was going to be. I was going to cover a lot of different kind of color science, color devices, color design. But I think tonight we're just going to be able to go over a little bit of color history and a little bit of color design because of the complexity and things that are involved. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, hopefully. This computer system will quit throwing things up in front of the when I don't know when it needs to or why it wants to. So anyway, so I guess let's go ahead and get started here. One thing I did want to mention is that next week is we're doing photo reviews. We do photo reviews on the first Friday of every month. So if you want to have your work looked at and submitted, I'd encourage you to do that as soon as possible. I can take images up to, let's see, the Thursday next week, and then it takes a little bit of time to put them together and organize them and stuff like that. So anyway, again, the reviews are anonymous, so no watermarks. And the idea of doing that is why I do them anonymously, so no one's embarrassed. Anyone can submit any kind of work. Doesn't matter the genre. It doesn't matter how long you've been shooting. It doesn't even matter what kind of camera you have. It can be a phone. It can be a Hasselblad. Doesn't really matter. So anyway, I encourage you to and get involved in that. It's always a lot of fun, and I think you guys will get something out of it. That's the whole idea, is to help you improve your photography. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is a couple of terms here. I'm not going to go into all of these, but these are some of the things I want to talk about, but just going to be too much to do in an hour. But these are some things you probably heard about before or seen written and not quite understood. sRGB, RGB, CMYK, ProPhoto. Those are color gamuts or color spaces. Analogous colors, we are going to talk about that. Complementary colors, chroma, color spaces, color temperature, color wheel. We'll talk about that color wheel. So anyway, these are some things that we're going to go over tonight. Like I said, the two topics we're going to talk about are color. I'm just going to very touch it, only one or two slides on color history, but the bulk of what we're going to talk about is color design. So I would call this part one of, I don't know, 2 or 3 at least. Depends how involved we want to get. I'd say there's easily a 3-part series we could do on this. But I think tonight, getting into color design will be good for you. I think you guys will get a good overview of what that means and why it's important. So, if you were with us last week and you were participated in the trivia, you might remember that we were talking about Sir Isaac Newton. And Sir Isaac Newton is the one that developed and figured out that white light was made up of multiple colors, primarily red, green, and blue. And so you would know this ahead of time if you were with us last week. But in roughly 1866, 1867, he produced his paper. And what he did is he found by putting a hole in the wall and light shining through it through a prism, he could break out the different colors. And he discovered that white light was made up of multiple colors of light. Up until that point, they thought maybe that it was just contaminated. The light was contaminated, and that's the reason that that we were seeing multiple colors, like in rainbows and things like that. So he came up with this concept called a color wheel. Now, the color wheel has changed a little bit. There's some debate on whether the layout is the same or not, but it's essentially exactly the same that when he developed it in 1666, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, right? We think we're so smart, but here this guy figured this out this many years ago, many decades, centuries ago. So the color wheel is essentially the heart of color design. And if you are a designer or even a photographer, or let's say you design logos or you do color layout, the color wheel is really your Bible, because that tells you exactly where the colors are, where complementary colors are, which colors you want to use. And so the reason this is important from a photography standpoint is that color has a big impact on the way we react as individuals, as humans. So, for example, I'm going into a lot of detail, but let's say red has a certain color, has a certain meaning to it. Yellow has a certain meaning. White has a certain meaning to it. We react in a way emotionally to those colors. We may not be aware of it, but that's exactly what happens. So by using certain colors, we can evoke emotion or convey or help tell a story. So, for example, let's just use a simple example of color in temperature. Okay, so if an image has got a little more blue to it, then it tends to come across as obviously cooler, and not only in temperature but also in meaning and things like that. The color that you see here tonight, well, there's my thing again. Don't know why this is going on, or where that's coming from. The colors that I use here in this set in the studio is designed on purpose because these are complementary colors. Kind of a warm tone in the foreground and a cool tone in the background. And when I show you the chart, you'll see why that's important. Okay, so let's see. Alton will ask a question here. Hello, Alton. Good to see you, buddy. Nice to have you on board. Let's see if I can get some of this in here. Let's see. He says, he's saying he's confused by, I don't know why this is not showing up either. He says that I have to read it. He says, I'm confused over which color wheel to use. At first I thought I was supposed to be using the one where complementary colors are blue, orange, yellow, purple, and red. Then I read photographers use light. When they use light complementary colors, blue, yellow, green, magenta, red, cyan. So which one should I use? I gather the first color wheel is a paint pigment, and the second one is for photographers. It's a little of both. That's the problem. It's not a hard and dry, oh, you use this one over the other one. It depends on what you're trying to invoke and what your primary color is. So, for example, as I go through this, you're going to find, let's say you already know one color. Let's say you're photographing a scene, or you're creating a studio scene, or you're doing landscape photography, and there's a lot of blue in the scene. Maybe it's a blue night. In other words, before morning, blue before the sunrise is coming up. Then you want to. So then, therefore, you would want to use a complementary color that went with the blue, or a contrasting color, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But that's really the key, is you have to figure out what colors are available first, and then go from there. And I'm going to show you some examples of this in a minute. And I'm also going to show you a tool that you might use that will be helpful, Alton. So let's see here. See if I can get back to my slides. Okay. So color history. So before we get into color history, though, let me remind you that the 7 elements of design are line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. So the one we're talking about tonight is color, but all the other ones are also important when you're shooting and when you're designing a photograph. You're making a photograph. You're not taking a photograph, right? I believe in making photos, not taking photos. Of course, there are times when you do just take a photo, but for the most part, you want to really make a photo. But color is a very important element in that aspect of the design, the 7 elements, the 7 common elements in design. And so color is what we're going to focus on tonight. Okay, so let's go. So let me just kind of start with the first one. And the first one is, I call it color everywhere. And this has to do with complementary colors. So if you only have 2 colors to work with, then generally you would use a color wheel that uses complementary colors. Okay, if you had more colors, if you're just doing a logo, if you were designing a 2-color logo, or you're doing a photo shoot and you had a primary color, then you'd be able to get away with just using complementary colors. Although you may find that you're going to add more colors than just the 2 colors. But the complementary colors wheel is primarily to be used when you have 2 colors and one is an opposite. Again, this would be an opposite here. This would be a warm tone on a color wheel, and the background is going to be a blue tone, and that's going to give you an opposite or complementary color wheel. Okay. So that's really where you would use those. In fact, if you look at now look, I'm not a designer, okay, but I play one on TV. If you look at just the slides, for example, the red and the blue, kind of a turquoise, that's exactly the same colors I use in the design of these bullet points in these slides. The background is red, and then the blue is accented here to be the title, or what I call the subtitle. And I picked those colors purposely because they are opposites on a complementary color wheel. All right. So I'll only give you an example of what I'm talking about. So here's an example of a photo with complementary colors. Now, you got to remember that this is not exactly accurate, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. And the reason is because this is like 5 colors, not 2. But normally you would see 2. And the reason is this image has a lot more colors in it than just 2. But I use it as an example because they're 2 very strong colors. The red hair and the blue jacket are the primary complementary colors. Now I'm going to show you something here. Let's see if I can do this real quick. I'm going to show you a tool. Adobe has a really interesting website that lets you pick and manipulate these colors. So I'm going to try. Hang on, I didn't do this ahead of time. I apologize. I'm going to show you this website here. I'm going to try at least, if I can figure out which monitor it is, because I'll always pick the wrong one. Let's see if it's this one. Did I guess correctly? Nope, I didn't. Hang on. I'll get you there. Sorry, guys. I know it's a little bit haphazard tonight. So that was 2. Let's see if it's 3. Should have done this ahead of time. That's not it. Oh, come on. What? Now I'm embarrassed. This is not working right. Okay, that's not it either. I'm getting close. I only have 5 monitors here to select from. And let's see if it's this one right here. Nope, that was not it either. Darn. Well, I want to show you this website here. Hang on, I might have it be another way to do this for you. Okay, let's try this. Let me just give you this, put this URL in here and bring up the browser. Apologize, guys. This is, okay, let's see if this works. That's worked. Okay, so there's got to be more than one way to do this. All right, so this is a website that Adobe has called, you can get to it by going to color.adobe.com. And this is, they will give you a color wheel that you can go through and you can pick out what you're talking about, whichever one you want to use. So here's a complementary color. Now, what you can do though is the nice thing is you can take one of your images and you can create, okay, you can extract the colors from one of your images. So I will take one here and I'll drag this over here like this. Are you seeing the same thing I'm doing? You're not seeing the same thing I'm doing, are you? I see, so got to do it over here. Okay, so let me drag this over here like this. Oh, maybe I can't do it this way. Sorry about that. Shoot, I wanted to show you this. This is very important. Let's see if I can do it this way. Boy, I'm sorry about this. I apologize. Try one more time if I can bring this screen capture up. No, that's not it either, did it? Darn. Oh man, I tell you, tonight is just a disaster. I should have just stayed in bed or whatever, right? I mean, that's what you do when things go bad. Although this is, and of course we got a complicated subject on top of it, right? So of course it's never going to work right. No, that's not it either. Why can't I find this monitor? That's just so weird. Can't be. It's got to be one of these. I don't have that many to choose from. Well, I don't understand why it's not working, but it's not. Okay. Anyway, so what if you go to this Adobe website, which again I was just going to show you this Adobe website, so I won't be able to show you what I was going to, but I'll show you this part anyway. Okay, so if you go to the this Adobe Color website I'm talking about, what happens here is it lets you pick different colors, different color charts. So you can put your own image in here. I couldn't do it for some reason. I don't know why, but it wouldn't let me put my own image in there. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger for you. I knew it was not going to work. I should have never. Oh well, now I can't go back on this thing. Oh, here we go. Go back. Okay, so what happens on this thing is that if you pick over here on the left, you can pick which different color wheel you want to pick. So if you, and the other thing is, what I can't show you for some reason is you can come over here and you can go in and say you want to create your own, so you drop your own image in here and it will create its own color wheel based on that image, which is exactly what I have done already for you. So I will show you the ones I've already created. All right, so here's one I've created. I dragged this image over there and I said I want to look at the complementary colors. Now, because there were more than 4 colors in the image, it actually created more than just a complementary color chart. Of course, normally there would be just 2 of these, but for a complementary color, but it picked 5. And you'll see this in a couple other examples I'm going to give you where you have a shade of some color, just a little bit of shade of a color, and so it'll pick that up as well. So again, though, the idea is a complementary color should be a color wheel should be used to pick 2 colors. So if you already know one color, again, the analogy I was using before is if you're doing a landscape or designing a logo or some other kind of graphic and you already know one color, maybe the client or the situation already, maybe it's an outfit, okay? So, and the person's wearing a certain outfit, you want to complement that that outfit, and so what you want to do is find a complementary color on the color wheel to go with that. That's the reason for doing this. Okay, that's the whole point of what I'm trying to show you. Now, the other one would be a monochrome. Now, you're going to find monochrome very common in landscape photography. So in landscape photography, you have basically, like I know that Kenda and Judy posted, Judy Hagen posted a photo on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, last week I think maybe, which was a beautiful landscape, and it was of rolling hills, and it had about 3 or 4 colors in it. And the colors define the depth of the photo. You could tell, you could see the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. And that was all defined by these monochromatic colors that were in the scene. So there's a good example of where you might want to use, or a monochrome would be an advantage. So, you know, again, if you're trying to create a certain mood, here's an example of a picture of a photo of a wall, okay? So, and if you look at the colors that are in this image based on the color wheel, it's pretty much just 1 or 2 colors. Now, again, I'm not being here exactly accurate, because I'm saying that technically, if you're in a class, technically you're using it 3 shades or tones of color in a monochromatic image, but this image here, this color wheel picked out more than that because there are obviously more tones in there. So you wouldn't use all the tones, but you can get an idea of what the 2 or 3 other colors you would use. Now, let me make a point about something. Look at fashion photography, for example. Now, I'm not a fashion photographer, and many of you are probably not as well, but if you're photographing people, and they say, well, what should I wear? This is a good example of where you want to learn your color science and your color design, so you can give them some examples. So maybe say, show me what you have. Send me some pictures. Send me some iPhone photos of what outfits you have. And then you can pick which ones are going to be best based on what your knowledge of color design would be. So when I look at, nowadays, when I look at images that impress me, that I think, hey, this is something I may want to shoot, or some variation of that, I find I'm not impressed that much by the lighting, because I know the lighting. I can look in that and say, okay, I see how the lighting works. But what I'm more impressed with is the design, the styling, the makeup, and that's all done basically by color design, color theory. And that's what really, if you next time you look at a picture and you're like, oh, I really love that image, start to analyze the colors in it. Look at what colors are there and learn to see which color wheel you think that they map to, whether it's complementary or some of the others I'm going to show you. And also, one other thing I want to mention, I know those of you that are landscape photographers, you may be shooting black and white. Okay, that's fine. But if you look, The sixth design element is value. And there's at least 10 shades of gray or more in this design. So this is really, it's not necessarily a color, but it has the same effect in many ways. So even if you're shooting in black and white, while you may not be using necessarily a color wheel, you are still using the values to represent depth in your image, and that's really what happens in your colors as well. Okay, so anyway, so a monochromatic image uses 3 or more shades based on a base color, and listen to me, subtle combinations of those color combinations are what's going to give you your monochromatic image. Okay, so even though it may sound like it's black and white, it's not. You're just basically using less shades of color. Okay, sorry about this. I know it's kind of getting rambling on here a little bit. Okay, the next one would be analogous color. Now again, these are 3 colors that are on the color wheel, except they're typically side by side. You'll see these quite often in photography and then again in logo design, where you'll see something that's, and it, to me, this one is kind of confusing because it looks a lot like it could also go with monochromatic, except there's a difference, or monochromatic is really more about one color and shades of that same color, where analogous is different colors along the color wheel. So the hue is different on the analogous color, where here it's really more of a on the monochromatic, it's really more not so much of shades, but of value or intensity of the same color. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So anyway, so analogous colors would be 3 colors side by side that would balance the scheme. Again, you see this a lot in fashion, and I see this a lot in landscape, especially if you're shooting at golden hour or blue hour in the morning, but where you really don't have a lot of colors, but you have a lot of gradations in colors, a lot of shades of orange or whatever in a sunset, things like that. So this would be again an example. Now, once again, we've got a few more than 3 colors in here because of this image I used, but you can see where they fall on the color wheel. They're right next to each other on the color wheel. And so this would be a good example of analogous colors, okay, because they typically will use the same multiple colors right next to each other. So anyway, so this is a photo of a wall with different shades of blue and also some greens in there, which would be, again, if you look. So what happened is when I took this photo and I put it into the Adobe color wheel, it developed these colors for me and showed me where they fall on that color wheel. And that's a great way to you be able to do the same thing in your photos, where you can start by, I was hoping to show you that, but I realized no, I can't, where you can start to find what colors are in your own photos and be able to figure out which ones work and which ones don't. So anyway, so the next one would be a triad in a color wheel. And as you can see, these are they're almost like complementary colors, where they're the opposite, but there's 3 colors that are involved in the opposite. So the green and the blue are opposite from the red in this particular scheme here. Obviously, this color wheel could shift, and so it could be pink, yellow, and more of a lighter color green, but it would still be the same 3 colors or the same angles on the color wheel. And that's really the difference, is where they fall on the color wheel, not so much the colors themselves. And I suspect they're probably mathematically opposite. So here is what one would look like with a triad. Here's again, I took this picture, dropped it into the Adobe website, and it calculated where they would be as a triad. And as you can see, now there's more in here because you got some greens in here, some heavy greens. But the blue obviously is in the water and the sky. The orange is obviously in the mountains. and the greens would be in the trees. So here's an example of those of you the landscape photographers of how to figure out whether the color palette, how it fits. I mean, this could also be used for an example if you're matting photos or hanging them somewhere in a gallery or in a home. You know, I know this is going to sound silly, but because we all think of ourselves as wonderful photographers and people, want to buy our art. But the reality is a lot of people buy art because it goes with the couch. Now, that's not the thing you want to hear, of course. That's not the best compliment, but that's exactly why many times they will buy something. So knowing the color palette of your image and knowing your client may also have a bearing on, especially if you're shooting landscape, of where they may use this image. Now, if you're shooting black and white, it's a little different. You have a little more variety there. But if you are doing, if you're shooting something like landscape, then you're going to have a lot more colors there you're going to have to deal with. So anyway, so that would be a Triad color wheel. Again, it's typically, there are 3 colors, can be more, but it's typically 3 colors that are opposite of each other. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about, and there's a few more of these, by the way. I'm not going into every one of them. There's some more variations on this that you can go in and study if you wanted. But the other one is called a square. It's also referred to as a tetradeck. I think that's the way it's pronounced, which probably means 4. This one is 4 evenly spaced colors, very much, again, like the Triad where we had 3 colors, but this uses 4 colors that are spaced out that are opposite of each other. So our red and our blue, or our turquoise at the bottom, the purple and the green are opposite on the color wheel. And here would be a good example where one that I went through, and I put this into the create color design, and it gave me this color palette, and it also gave me this color wheel. And once again, this is very, very common, used in designing websites, layouts, brochures, anything that you may be doing that's going to be using your photos. It might be helpful for you to know what they're going to be using it for, and what the color palette maybe they've already designed is they're going to be using it for. So again, that's what the square would be. So it's 4 evenly spaced colors on the color wheel. They're typically bold colors, dominant colors. And the more colors you add in your palette, the more difficult it is to balance, of course, because then they start conflicting with each other. So hopefully that's helpful. So let me see here. One other thing I want to go back to. I want to remind you guys that if you're in social media people, to be sure and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. And always happy to see that. And hello, Leland. Boy, you did make it. That's kind of unusual. Thanks for joining me here, buddy. Fix my vMix for me while I'm here tonight. I tell you, it's gone wacky. First time it's ever done this, but all of a sudden the keyer number 3 just pops up randomly. I don't know why. I've never done this before. Never used this before. I don't know if there's a trigger somewhere hidden in this preset or what, but it's kind of whacked out. So anyway, let's kind of go back again. Let's kind of go a quick review on this, because I got messed up there in the beginning, and I want to make sure you guys understand what we were talking about, because when I was trying to get the window capture going here. Okay, so remember, as I was saying, that Isaac Newton was the one that really kind of came up with the color history or color theory. Most people don't realize that. They just think, I guess, he was the guy that kind of recognized gravity, right? When Newton, the apple falling on his head. I guess he found that the apple was red, and that spurred him on to something else. I don't know. But anyway, Newton was the one that kind of really is modernized or came up with the color wheel that we all use today for design and understanding of where the color palette is and what colors we want to use in our images and our graphics. And again, you know, somebody like Leland who does live video production, making sure your lower thirds and your graphics match using this same color design is very important. And this, of course, would have to be, as I said before, one of the 7 common elements in design: lines, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. And if you want to learn a little more about these other items, I've done videos, and there's a 4-part series I've done, 3 or 4-part series on learning to see like an artist. And I go over each of these. I go over line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. And so if you're interested in learning more about this from that standpoint, I encourage you to understand, to go through and watch those. I go into more of the psychology behind how they're used and why. So again, the complementary colors we talked about are 2 opposite colors. So if you're dealing with something and you have, you know, again, you have a client, or like Leland's case, if he's doing live sporting events or he's doing some kind of an event for a client, and he's designing lower thirds or graphics for it, then you want to be sure and look and make sure your colors complement the client's logo or design, and this would be a perfect example for doing that. They're typically 2 colors, and they're typically very opposite. I don't have one here, I don't think I had, but I showed last week, I think it was, an example of one where I will oftentimes, if I don't have an interesting background for a photo shoot and there's an outdoor situation, what I'll do is put the person in front of the window, or even shoot outdoors, and I will put the camera on tungsten white balance. When you do that, it turns the image completely blue. Okay? So then what you do is you take your strobe and you put a gel in front of it called a CTO gel, color temperature orange. That converts the daylight balance flash to tungsten. So now when you aim that at the subject is going to be color corrected. Their color temperature is going to be correct, but the background is still going to be blue. So it's a great way to be able to use white balance as a tool for creating these contrasting or complementary colors, because if you look, you'll see that this is a complementary color. The yellow or the orange and the blue are opposites. So that's one reason they're so appealing, and one reason you see so many people doing this. It's also the same thing if you were doing indoor, you take indoor lighting, which is tungsten, which is going to be warm, and you add blue lighting or flash. That's, you know, people notice, wow, it looks like it's got flash, and I don't want that, right? It's not very flattering because the background is warm and the foreground is cool. Well, the CTO gel will convert that over to a more warmer color, so it balances. But sometimes you want to use that to your advantage. If you have a cool colored background and you warm up the foreground using a CTO gel, it can help you, and it will be a much more flattering photo and appealing. And the reason is, of course, because of, oops, sorry, wrong one. Because it is using the complementary color wheel. Boy, I'm just having all kinds of trouble here tonight. Okay, anyway. So, again, that's one reason you would want to use, and this kind of goes back to Alton's question earlier, which color wheel do you use? It depends on which colors you have to, how many colors you have to work with, how many you need to integrate, and what colors are already there in existing environment. Hopefully that helps. And again, complementary color in this situation would be the red hair against the blue jacket, gives you a complementary color. It's probably not the best example of complementary colors. There's probably more of them that are out there. Again, the monochrome is the same color, but different shades of that color, having to do with the tint of it. So it's not the same as multiple colors. It's the same base color, but with different different values associated with it. And again, this is an example here with everything. If you obviously it's all orange, and you can see this, it showed up on the color wheel on the left. But the fact of the matter is, it's the same color. It's just different shades. Some are lighter, some are darker, but it's the same actual value color, just different values. The analogous ones, again, are 3 colors side by side, very different than the monochromatic image because they are actually unique color values. They're not the same color that are using different amounts of light or different shades. It's actually completely different colors. So you're going to get a different color temperature or color value from blue than you will from a magenta, for example. And again, this is an example here showing where you have a wall or something with different shades of blue on it. But if you look over here on the left, you see they're right next to each other on the color wheel, which is why they're considered analogous. And then the last one would be the triad, where you have 3 colors, but they're opposites. So this is like a 3-color version of your complementary colors. They're opposite. And again, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I've done a lot of web design stuff where I've tried to use 3 colors and sometimes they don't actually come out well. They don't look right to me. But by shifting this color left or right, the primary color, you can come up with some better combinations. But again, as an example here, in a triad where you have a landscape photo, there's really only 3 primary colors in this photo. There's different shades of those colors, but if you look at the blue at the top, for example, but really, and the green, but they're really just 3 colors. And that's blue, green, and orange are the 3 primary colors in that particular photo. So that would qualify as a triad image. And then, of course, last but not least, are the 4 colors that you'd find in a square that would give you, it's the same, it's basically built on the exact same model that we've already talked about. It's built on the complementary color model. It's just that you're adding more colors to it. So the red and the magenta would be opposites, and the purple and the green would be opposites. But it's really exactly the same color wheel that you have here, except you're only using 2 colors. And when you talk about the square, you're talking about 4 colors. So other than that, and you can see on the left on the color wheel, it's pretty much the same thing. That's right. So you see the colors that are complement and that are opposite of each other. So anyway, that's all I really had tonight. Again, we're going to get into some more of this next time. I'm going to get more into color devices. So one of the things that you got to remember, and this is the thing that threw me really more than anything when I first switched from film to digital, was how do I know if my colors are right or not? Okay. So what the problem I had is that, usually when we were dealing with film, you just took the film to the lab. They had a calibrated equipment. They would process it, and you knew the images you got back were the right color. But depending on the film you're using. But nowadays, I've heard this so many times, the image looks completely different. On this monitor, it may look one way. On my iPhone, it may look another. It may not look right. The client may say, hey, this looks too blue, too yellow, whatever. How do you know that color is accurate? And that's really what happens when you deal with color space and color gamut. So when you look here, I'll show you one of these. So here in the lower left-hand corner, this thing, it looks like a kind of a I don't know what it looks like, top of a surfboard, I guess. That is a color space showing you all the visible colors that the human eye can see. Well, not every device can display those colors. So what they have to do is come up with a profile. And the profile will take and map that real color to the color that your device can display. So red may not be red. Red may be a slightly different version of red, but because maybe you don't have all the color inks or whatever to display that. Maybe the monitor is not a full RGB monitor. So therefore, you have to have this color profile. Anyway, that's what we're going to talk about next time. Get more into the detail of understanding how you use these colors and how to map them together with each other. And then also, one of the other things I'm going to talk about next time is this issue of CYMK versus RGB colors. So if you look over here on the left, the ones there with the black in the middle, that's a CMYK color palette, and that is considered a subtractive color system, whereas the RGB colors on the right there, you see the R, the B, and the G are additive, and they work completely different. So anyway, it's understanding how this works is a big deal, and it's it can get very complicated. My goal is to kind of make it simple. Like I said, I could go into a lot more detail on all these things and spend 2 hours, but I wanted to get I just kind of wanted to wet your whistle a little bit about this, kind of get your thinking about color science, color design, and how that may fit into some of your images. So anyway, again, reminder, next week is photo reviews. So if you want to submit your images for photo review, it'd be great. Just go to review.photomentor.tv and just submit the images. I think you can submit up to an image that's a 10 megabit file. They are done anonymously, so you can submit your work. Don't worry about getting embarrassed. I'm not going to embarrass anybody anyway, and they are done. The reviews are done based on technical, on storytelling, and on how well they really accomplished their goal. Whether they really have done, it's not about whether I like them or not. In other words, it's really about whether the image works or not. So that's next week. So again, be sure and consider joining me next week for that one. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. I apologize. It happens once in a while, and my computer system has gone wacky on me here. So, and I also apologize I couldn't share the Adobe website. But Sue Ann put that URL in the comments, so it's https://color.adobe.com. Try that, play it with it, and I think you'll see what I was talking about there. Anyway, thanks again, and thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you next week, same time, same bat channel, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Take care.